I'd say I'm a storyteller and a listener of stories because my favorite thing was older people, people that were different than me, that were unusual, that I loved to listen to what they had to say. And my neighbor that lived at Red Jacket Coal Camp when I was probably 4, he was Hungarian and didn't speak a lot of English, had no family and no kin, and I loved him dearly. And he didn't speak much English, but we'd sit on the porch and we communicated so well. And Mom thought I went over there because he would give me a banana or orange, but it wasn't that. There was just something, and I'd look. I wasn't allowed in the house. I remember seeing his kitchen, and he had all these spices hanging in the windows and things that smelled and looked different than anything I'd ever seen. And I'd make him clover necklaces, and he made his curtains out of those clover necklaces. And the older lady that lived across the road too, she was of Pennsylvania Dutch descent, probably from Germany, but I don't know that for a fact. And this rich experiences in the coal camps with different ethnic groups living right together, and the wonderful differences in stories fascinated me. And that's where my love for this kind of stuff started. And the other thing is my compassion for any kind of treating people wrong. I have a real strong feeling about civil rights of all people, and nobody's rights being taken away. The Constitution, the very basis of the Constitution, is to make sure that every citizen gets the same constitutional rights as others. And I see that being really neglected, and actions to destroy it because of religious differences. You can't make a religion to force your way on somebody else. When it comes to America, we need to be big enough for everybody, and that includes not taking rights away from anybody. So civil rights is at the very heart of my passion, and the stories that you gain and the knowledge and wisdom you get from people that's different. That's how I got involved. I didn't know anything about this history of Blair or Mate One or anything really. And when I read David Corbin's book, and then also the book by Bill Blizzard that Wes Harris made sure got printed, I learned something that I'd always been strong Union, because we came to Red Jacket for Daddy to get a union job. And I knew what it meant. It meant a better way of making a living, health care, and all of these things. We bought one of the company houses that now is for sale, that you were used to just be able to stay in until they threw you out. But we bought a little company house there at Red Jacket. And first generation buying the houses instead of being owned by the coal company. And it made a difference in our life. We were homeowners now instead of renters. And it made a permanent place for us that stayed there in Mingo County, even though we moved to another little area. But that meant the world to us. And then when I read Bill Blizzard's words about the Union Pledge, what you had to promise when you pledged into the Union, you swore not to discriminate against any Union brother because of culture, race, creed, or speech. This was in, like 1920 and earlier. And yet the UMWA had that in their creed. Some unions didn't even allow blacks and immigrants and things as a part of their union to begin with. Well, the Wobblies and the UMWA are the two, I think, that had that strong group of ethics for all people. When I read that, the promises you had to make to even be a member, that you're not going to discriminate against them because of language and culture and all these things. If any other state had that history, they would have publicized it like crazy and been bringing tourists in to talk about, look how progressive we were 100 years before anybody else. And yet it was unknown, and it was purposely unknown. That case right there is full of the little books that has any of that history, and it's such a small, tiny little line that it doesn't explain anything, because it was hushed up, pushed aside, and not publicized. And it was the very basis of what could make a difference in our county. I think I see that with this museum and this history being known and the pride. My favorite quote in the whole world on this kind of thing is, you can tear a community down, destroy it, and burn their houses, and they will rebuild. But if you reduce them down to their culture or their heritage means nothing, it's like they never existed. Well, when you bury the history and somebody else creates a narrative for you, that's what happens. It's not who you are. It's their representation of what they want to show you to be. And it always helped the coal company to be viewed as troublesome, feuding mountaineers, drinking that you could not work with, you could not negotiate with, because of those kind of people, you had to deal with. You can blame them for everything. If you turn the narrative to that's who they are. There was feuds all over different places in this country. Which one do we know? The Hatfield and the McCoy. Those are the names that's known, only because it helped coal companies to picture us as warring, drunken mountaineers that you couldn't negotiate with. And of course, Mate won because Sid Hatfield, he's one of those Hatfields, so that was played up, to minimize what was really happening. The loss of constitutional rights and civil rights guaranteed by the Constitution. All of us have the right to meet out in the street and talk. They were met by the Baldwin Felts and told, break up here, you can't do this. You can't even talk in the street with your neighbors because the company bosses are there telling you, and they acted like they were the police, bringing law and order and protecting property. But what they were really doing was controlling citizens, even to the point of taking constitutional rights away. And at one point, they wanted to, if you committed a crime, say in Mingo County, or was accused of committing a crime, and you had to be on trial, they wanted to fix it so they could take you to another county and have you tried, say, at Bluefield instead of Matewan, to make sure you got found guilty. They did not get that passed, but they tried. Can you imagine, like a Constitution says you have the right by trial or jury by your, like for your own people, your own peers. But they were going to try to take that away too. So they controlled the house, the money, who you could talk on the street, how long you could be there, and if you did any of those things, they would throw you out of the company house you lived in. So it was total control, so that they could, take your rights away and make you labeled as somebody that you couldn't listen to, couldn't deal with. And that's who we became. And this history here, I think, is a turning point.